connecting to the internet.
Internet.
Networking software.
World Wide Web thing on a computer today.
Computer.
NetSurfer Pro.
This is NetSurfer Pro, a whirlwind ride through the World Wide Web. I'm your host, Matthew Marisa.
And of course, I'm your co-host, Galen Wilson.
And we've been behind a bit. We've been missing a bit, but we're just not gonna waste any more time.
Yeah, you've been waiting for us. We're just gonna go dive in, feet first, head first. We're doing like that diving pose in animation. Speaking of animation,
I don't think that's feet first and head first.
I'm really flexible, so...
Yeah, I don't really have any intro topic other than 2 new Zootamayo music videos dropped, and they're available in America on release. They finally figured out how to set it available for more regions.
Yeah, they found the box that you have to click, and I'm very happy that they did.
Yeah, because they're lore.
Yes!
There's lore. We're not getting into that right now, though. We have to go into our topic.
One of them has a really cute alien... and another one has a really cute staff. Mm-hmm. But that's all that matters.
Yeah, that's all that matters for that. I mean, that's all that we're going to go into because we have an actual topic. Excuse my fast speech. I'm just so excited to talk about this. If we wait any longer, it will no longer be topical. That's the thing, is we're usually so behind on, like, what's popular and what's in terms of, like, things to cover.
Like, yeah, we really managed to get the Pal World one out, like, around the zeitgeist, and I'm hoping that we, caught the tail end of this, because it is such an amazing game, such a wonderful, vision of the future.
Yeah.
We are, of course, talking about Animal Well.
The Fact Corner.
So... here's some facts. Animal Well was pretty much designed and created by Billy Basso. He had a whole devlog about it and his process. He made the game. There's a lot of single devs that I think are pretty well known, and then there's like people who get credit for the work of others. I don't want to say that in a bad way, but like
it's,
I think there are auteurs in gaming. There's a difference between Toby Fox making Undertale and Toby Fox making Deltarune, because Deltarune has a lot of help from other people. And even then, he didn't entirely do Undertale on his own. Like, Temi Chang worked on Undertale as well. But then you have, like, Tetsuya Nomura, who literally gets blamed and credited for things he had no input on, which is a whole other topic. But Billy Basso actually made Animal Well by himself. I just want to stress that.
Yeah.
It was first announced in 2022 as part of E3 Day of the Devs. Remember E3? It was one of the last things that they ever announced. And alongside the trailer in 22 came an ARG.
Oh, we do like those.
We love those. And then it released this year, May 2024, not too long ago, to pretty big like critical and social acclaim by audiences, fans, critics, It was a big deal. However, I think it is worth noting that part of why it became so big for like the general gaming audience wasn't just based on the E3 trailer, but on the announcement of its acquisition and publishing by a new publisher called Bigmode.
If you have heard of Bigmode, the reason that you have is because it is the publishing company that was founded, not solely run or anything, but primarily at the helm by Video Game Donkey.
Well, it's primarily helmed by Donkey's wife, Leah B.
Well, yes, true.
But Donkey is a major factor in that, He is a major part of it, and I think talking about stealing credit or, like, not giving proper credit, a lot of people were like, oh, it's Donkey's game.
Yeah,
have you played Donkey's game? He didn't make the game.
He
had some input on it as, like, a publisher, but he didn't make the game by and large. There was a lot that was already finished by the time they picked it up, as evidenced by the 2022 trailer. Bigmode was a big deal because Donkey had this long history of being very critical of the like major game space, but also like having some, I don't want to say controversy, because it's ultimately just him like not vibing with the game and like sometimes trying to make criticism that's funny, but ultimately messes up like having accurate criticism for the sake of comedy.
Yeah.
There's things to be critical about for Donkey, but I think in many regards it's not huge.
It's something where I would consider it like, if you don't like Donkey's video on Death Stranding, for example. And there's reasons to not like the Death Stranding video. There are things that he misrepresents about the game, but it would be weird to be like, because he made a bad video about this, or because he had takes that I don't like, or even just bad takes, if you want to say it, of, various video games. It would be weird to be like, Bigmode, yeah, I'm only gonna publish good games? Okay, buddy.
Yeah,
you're the guy who doesn't like Death Stranding.
Yeah, that was sort of the thing, was that when he announced Bigmode, he was like, I'm only gonna publish good games, and that is a very bold claim to make, obviously, and it is just interesting to be like, okay, what does Donkey consider a good game? A game with a grappling hook? That's a Donkey reference.
That's a little Donkey reference for you to me.
It's that, like, sometimes his takes on certain games are really off, and sometimes he plays them up for comedy, but then people take them as fact. But a lot of that, I think, just kind of leads to internet drama rather than anything really tangible or, like, bad. Like, I don't know, I did get upset at the time with some of his, like, Death Stranding stuff, but at the same time, it was such a small, minor thing, it feels like it had no real impact on anything in the long term.
Yeah.
And I don't think he's a bad person,
Yeah.
I'm not going to prescribe villainy to him.
I feel like Donkey essentially has gone through the, like, internet content creator Olympics a few times. And, like, a number of others have done this. I'm gonna point out, like, Game Grumps or something, where it's like, people have watched them long enough and been around long enough to kind of dissect their takes on things and where they have good points and where they just fundamentally fail. But at the same time, I feel like there's also this aspect of, like, parasocialness with Donkey at the very least, where it's like, he has bad takes on video games, therefore he can never do anything good ever again, and if you like Donkey, you are a piece of shit.
Yeah.
And it's like, and that's just not true. That's just kind of a dumb way to look at it. I, personally, would like to spend just a minute talking about the fact that this was a success, because there was a very good tweet that I saw. I wish I could credit it. I'm not going to, though. Essentially, the tweet said, the reason that this was a success isn't because Donkey has, like, any specific special insight. He's been playing video games for a long time, but he's not like, some amazing video game, knower-gooder person. It's more just that the philosophy of, I'm only going to publish a good video game, is leagues better than most publishers, because most publishers nowadays, especially AAA publishers, are primarily just, how do we milk this for everything it's worth? And even when you get into indie space, it's kind of like, I'm gonna bring up Devolver, for example. Devolver is a good publisher, and I do like them. I think they're one of the better publishers in the industry. But, like, they have a type. They have a specific vibe of game that a lot of their games go with. And so Donkey being like, we're just gonna find a game, and if it's good, we'll publish it, is novel insofar as, like, yeah, that's what video game publishers should have been doing since day one.
I do want to kind of push back on that a bit, because Devolver is a good example of a similar publisher in terms of the indie space, and Devolver does generally want to publish good games.
Yes.
Like, they don't go publish games based on their long-term, like, microtransaction sales or anything. Like, that is still the goal for Devolver and a lot of other publishers. I think it is more so that, like, Devolver doesn't say that because it's implicit. And also, Devolver has a longevity of, like, some of their games are sleepers, but they also are more about giving opportunity to a lot of devs. And they're going to have sleepers and misses because they cast a wide net. They try to spread out their availability so that more people can make things.
Yeah.
Tiny Build's the same way.
Yeah, to put a fine point on it, I don't say that as a criticism of Devolver, or rather, I don't say that trying to say Devolver bad. Devolver, we like Devolver here.
Right. I think what made Donkey's statement so incendiary wasn't just its juxtaposition with the major AAA and AA studios and publishers, but also that it was coming from Donkey, a guy who is not afraid to have opinions on video games.
Yeah.
I think, like, people were curious, like I said, just what Donkey thinks is a good game to then be published. And a lot of Animal Well, and it's like, release coverage was, is the first Bigmode game a good game like Donkey claimed? Is this like what? It's Donkey's game in that it is the one he published, and Bigmode as a whole is like, it's like a contender in a gladiator arena. Everyone's waiting to see if it dies or wins. A lot of people are fine either way. They're just preparing their thumbs to point up or down.
Yeah.
Don't tell me which one means which. I don't care. But I think because of that, a lot of eyes were on Animal Well. I want to share sort of my personal experience with this. I first saw the game in 2022 and thought, that looks great. I like Metroidvanias. This looks very Metroidvania. You've got a little ball character, kind of reminded me of like Within a Deep Forest or an Untitled Story or stuff like that. And then the animals part of Animal Well reminded me of like Rain World.
Yeah.
Very ecosystem driven. And then later, I found out that all of the Thinky puzzle nerds are super excited for this game. And I didn't realize the extent that it would be thinky and puzzly. But then when it came out, I was like, okay, I gotta try this. Everything is leading me in this direction. There's Bigmode publishing it, and it's a big thing. It's a puzzle game, and all the other puzzle people I follow and respect are talking about it. It looks cool, and I was interested in it from the start. It's a great game.
It's a really good game.
Turns out it's a good game. Who knew? They published a good one. They're 1 for 1 so far. Honestly, That's a pretty good track record. They should just shut it down now.
Yep. We are now closing Bigmode.
Yeah.
Yeah. To speak briefly, I was somebody who had not heard about this game until post-Bigmode acquisition. I follow a lot of other indie games. I'm excited for Skate Story, for example. But, like, it just didn't really cross my threshold. I'm not usually huge on Metroidvanias. I'm also not specifically into thinky puzzle games like you are, and so I'm not in that specific vibe. But when it came out, oh, Bigmode has acquired this, and then it came out, oh, this is a really good video game, that's when my attention got piqued, and I was like, oh, okay, alright, let's try this. Arlo really freaking likes it, so it has to be good.
Yeah. So, I want to give a bit more of a preface while we're in the fact corner, which we're sort of duck and weaved in and out of. It's worth noting that, as I mentioned before, Billy Basso has a devlog where he goes over the creation of the game, the tools involved, a lot of the, there's some really special lighting effects throughout the game that create sprites, but then essentially cover them with similar lighting maps to regular 3D games to give it a very specific look. The way I'd say it is it's like if you were to make a stained glass mural out of pixels.
Yeah.
There is a shininess to everything that also creates depth in a lot of areas. That almost looks like there is backlights to it, and that it's being lit from the sides and the front, depending on the light source.
Yeah.
It's a really unique look.
It's like it has a, like you said, a standard 3D game rendering engine that it then kind of puts a voxel shader over. And the end result is beautiful. It is a stunning game to look at.
Yeah. I also want to just give a shout out, not just to Billy Basso, but to Dan Edelman, who was Billy Basso's partner in crime for most of the dev cycle. Eventually, Dan Edelman was responsible for connecting Billy with Bigmode. And he also said that he helped out Leah and Donkey, during the early parts of Bigmode as a consultant. Dan Edelman is credited in the game and multiple times in multiple ways, so I just wanted to shout him out.
Yep.
Seems pretty cool. The game itself, I think... So, one important part in the devlogs that I want to mention is that Billy Basso has outright stated that the game is sort of comprised of layers. There's layer 1, which is the normal Metroidvania gameplay that a casual gamer can get. And then there are further, inner, deeper layers that are more complex, more hidden, more convoluted. And I think to match that, we are going to do the episode by layer.
Yes.
That way, if you don't want to be spoiled past a certain point, you can stop at that layer and then come back later to listen to the rest of the episode, because that's good for us. But we're going to do it by layer.
That's right. This is going to be the Animal Well iceberg lettuce.
Yummy. I have completed, I think, layer 5, I want to say, is how you would pronounce it. And I'm aware of the layer after that, which is, I believe, the last layer that the community as a whole is aware of. I say the community because that's very important, and we'll keep that in mind a bit later.
Yeah, a part of this is going to be a community effort, / was a community effort.
Yeah. So, what's Animal Well like?
Well... Anyway, so... Animal Well is a Metroidvania in which you play a little blob, a little, like, orange dude.
Yeah, what do you think the dude is? I think he's a seed. Or a potato.
I like a seed. A seed is very good. A potato is also pretty good, although I play Warframe, so potatoes have different meanings to me. Please respect my culture.
So... You play as a little dude, he comes out of a flower. That's why I think he's a seed or a potato.
Yeah.
Probably a seed in that case. Also, every animal wants to eat him.
Yes. So, what is Animal Well in a gameplay sense? Animal Well is a Metroidvania in which you explore a well, so to speak.
Sort of.
That is full of animals, and not just full of animals, but seemingly full of, ancient civilization-style buildings and such, statues to animals. There is a clear society aspect here. But it is also pretty clearly long past that, like any good Metroidvania or like any good, post-civilization story. And so you, as the seed, are trying to collect a number of flames, I think? Yeah. You're trying to collect a number of flames and put them in statues to get to a final section. That's the, basic end goal that you're working towards, but... The devil is, of course, in the details, because as a Metroidvania, you unlock tools that will allow you to gain access to different portions, and because the game is very non-linear, your playthrough and someone else's playthrough may be wildly different.
Yeah. Let's go over some of these tools. The game is a side-scrolling 2D platformer, much like typical Metroid, and the tools you get, though, are pretty far away from typical Metroid. I think the most normal one is the first item on the left, if you were to just go to the left at the start, which is the bubble wand. This is a wand that shoots a bubble, and you can jump on the bubble. It makes platforms.
I love this wand so much.
It's one of the best items in any Metroidvania.
It really is. So, okay.
Up there with the foam gun from Shadow Complex and the foam gun from Prey.
Yeah, so... Nitro Rad, to bring up another creator, Nitro Rad every once in a while kind of bemoans the double jump. He has this opinion that generally speaking, a 3D platformer should probably do something more interesting than just your standard double jump. It's kind of a cop-out. And I love the bubble wand specifically because it is one of the most interesting double jumps in a video game. You create a little bubble, it will go up very slowly enough that you can then jump on top of it. When you are on top of it, it will slowly begin to descend, but if you jump off of it after, it will pop. And so you can kind of immediately tell, you put down a bubble, you still have to platform. It is still your skill that progresses you. But the fact that you have the bubble to help you is incredibly helpful, especially when you get to things like air currents and such. We'll get to that in a moment. But, the simple fact that the first thing you pick up, the first thing you are most likely to pick up, assuming you just go left, of course, is, the double jump that immediately tells you the kind of skill and the kind of creativity that's going to be in this game. Love it.
Right.
So good.
I think this was both of our first main items.
Yeah.
And, you can not get this. There's a lot of other items that are accessible at the start. This one's by far, the most useful to have early on. There are so many jumping puzzles in the game where it's how do I get up there? Oh, right, I can make a platform. Anytime you can make a platform in a game, A, there's probably glitches. There are glitches involved. You can wrong warp with the bubble. It's a whole thing. B, you can just get super creative with it. I always love that shit. I love Concrete Shot in Mega Man 9. I love this. It's great. There's also... a lot of the items in the game have, hidden functions. So the game is very non-verbal. There isn't a lot in the way of actually explaining anything.
Yeah.
Usually it's just text boxes you get when you pick up an item that says what the item is. And then there's, press A to jump, press X if you're using an Xbox controller to use the weapon, etc. But there's not, a text box saying... use the bubble wand to create a bubble. Jump on the bubble. And this is very important for sort of further puzzly reasons that it is a game where figuring out how your tools work and exactly what tools are at your disposal is part of the figuring out process. In the case of the bubble wand, you have, just the normal process of bubble, jump on it, jump off. You can also aim the bubble wand below you, which doesn't normally have a lot of help, but it is useful if you were to jump and use the bubble wand in midair to then land on the bubble right after you spawn it.
Yeah.
Additionally, a lot of people learn early on that if you jump and use the bubble wand at the same time, you can jump onto the one you're making, immediately, and use that to climb up.
Yeah, it's a little bit finicky, but if you get the timing down right, you can pretty easily get infinite air.
Yeah. Now, if you can't do that, you can still get an improved bubble wand later in the game, much later, that lets you spawn multiple bubbles at once. And any puzzle that requires you to gain infinite height off the bubbles will be doable after you get that.
Yeah.
It doesn't gate progress behind doing that trick. It is more so that it is an option that will make traversal easier and might let you access areas out of order slightly differently. Now, I bring up the bubble wand first, partially because it's great. It's a great microcosm of the game's philosophy behind weapon and item design, but also because it seems very fantastical compared to the other items. So, there's an item that's a frisbee. It's called a disc, but, you throw it, and there are dog enemies that will try to eat you. But if you throw the frisbee, the dogs will chase after the frisbee.
Yeah.
There's a slinky, where you put the slinky on steps, and it will go down the steps. And there are a lot of puzzles where you have to use the slinky to hit switches on the floor, like pressure plates, that are far away from you. So, you use the slinky, it starts traveling down, you go onto, a block, and then when the slinky hits the pressure plate, the block rises like an elevator. There's a yo-yo, which is one of the closest things to an actual weapon you have.
Yeah.
There are firecrackers that you use to scare enemies and kill ghosts, but those are more of a limited resource. They're kind of like super bombs or missiles in Metroid, where it's you use them when you have to, but they're not spammable.
Yeah.
The yo-yo, though, is spammable. You can aim it in multiple directions. It extends, it comes back, you can swing it around you.
It specifically follows a trajectory of spinning as well.
Yeah.
And so one of the primary uses is you'll see a little curved path that has a button in it. And so you will fire it down, and then it comes right back to you, and you go, I need to turn around, so that it spins the other way. And then you turn around, and it spins the other way, and then it goes all the way around in the little curved hole and hits the button, and you go, aha, I'm smart.
It's very great. I love that all of the items you get, except for maybe one or two, are toys.
Yeah.
That's just a very fun little bit. It has a lot of charm.
Really imaginative, yeah.
Again, the bubble wand is the only thing that feels that fantastical, but also it's just a bubble. Bubble wands are a real thing.
Yeah.
It's the thing you dip into your bubble fluid to then blow a bubble with. It's so wonderful, just that little bit of playfulness and childlike wonder that combines with the mystery of the game.
If there's one word I would use to describe this game, it's intuitive.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll be speaking on that more, but yeah, all of the tools at your disposal, assuming that you're of a certain demographic assuming that you are, generally speaking, grew up as a child in the United States, I can't speak for any other country, a lot of these toys feel like specific staples of, childhood, frisbee, slinky, yo-yos. And so you can find the item and then sort of immediately tell what the function should be.
Sort of, yeah. I think, with the dogs, that's a big deal, is that the toys that you think dogs would chase, they chase.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it because Animal Well can be a very atmospheric game, and sometimes it can jump scare you, but not in a way that is intentionally spooky or dangerous. There is one big jump scare, which is a kangaroo that chases you around the map sometimes.
Fuck the kangaroo.
And it can feel random when the kangaroo actually appears. It's very loud. That's one of the only jump scares in the game, though, and it's not really a jump scare.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that are spooky in the game, but there are also a lot of warm and cute moments that balance it out. And I think the fact that your weapons, in this case, are toys, kind of helps that. There's a lot of tension, but it also alleviates that tension pretty constantly.
Yeah.
It has a good idea of how to be cute, and it uses that to its advantage. I want to just sort of talk about the world of the animal well, because there's a lot of animals. There are some spooky ones. The kangaroo aforementioned. There is an ostrich that fucked me up. It's like you have to hit 4 switches underground in like these molehill tunnels.
Yeah, these like winding tunnels, and it's a boss fight essentially. The boss fights are great, but so you duck under one of the molehill tunnels, and then the ostrich buries its head in the ground and follows you, and it's fucked.
Okay, that is fucked. I had a nightmare once about, I was playing like Donkey Kong Country Returns, but there were these weird glob enemies that would like extend their neck so their mouth chases after DK, and like I would go over like a ledge and it would go down the ledge and keep following.
Oh god.
And so the bird reminded me of that. There's also a wiener dog that does something similar.
Yeah.
But that's more funny, I think. I laughed at that because dachshunds are cute.
Yeah, the wiener dog segment comes after another of other dogs, and it's a really good little bait and switch.
Mm-hmm. There's some like marmots or some sort of thing like that, or ferrets that will chase after the slinky in one puzzle, which is very fucking annoying.
Yeah.
Because they'll try to steal your slinky away. There's a groundhog that we will mention and talk about later. There's another thing that looks like an ostrich or a peacock or an emu that's like trapped in a wheel. I want to go ahead and mention that, like, you mentioned the like ancient ruins.
Yes.
There's a number of temples, and sort of like in Zelda almost, all of the main fires you get are in these temples. In one of the temples is like this weird machine temple with moving platforms, and it turns out they're all powered by one ostrich.
Yeah.
On a big hamster wheel. Also, there's a bunch of cats locked in cages, and you gotta free them.
Yeah, the world building of this game.
Yeah.
Again, I feel like the fact that it uses so many common animals makes a lot of the rest of it very intuitive. For example, there's a segment that includes platforming on some water, where before you're actually in that segment, you see a number of flamingos like walking around and darting their head down to presumably eat. And so, you see that and you're like, oh, that's a fun little scene. But then, when you get to a certain area and start having to platform there, you realize that, oh, that's an obstacle I have to avoid.
Yeah, so sharp things pop your bubble, which includes bird beaks.
Yep.
There is the flamingos or herons you mentioned, the waterfowl, where when they stab their mouths down, it will pop the bubble. But there's also a hummingbird who's a fucking asshole who will just auto-pop bubbles in certain rooms to prevent you from skipping certain challenges.
Yeah.
Very funny. Some other highlight animals are the capybaras in the capybara room.
Yep, they're just chilling.
It's a save room that looks like a heart, and I kept going back there like, is there anything here for like a puzzle or anything? Nah, it's just chilling.
Yeah, it's
just
chill.
Cute little capybaras. There's the monkeys that flick like bugs at you.
Yeah, there's like a little monkey animal, or like a monkey and her child.
Yeah.
And she just like looks at you and then like holds up a rock and flicks it.
Yeah. The penguins are also fantastic.
Yeah.
The penguins slide on their belly, and it's very cute. So the goal of the game is to get the 4 flames. Each one is guarded by a boss fight, but they're pretty unconventional, I think.
Yes.
So the most boss fight is the like chameleon lizard.
Yeah, there is a chameleon that will try to suck you up with his tongue. And one of the recurring enemies is hedgehogs, who are essentially the little spiny guys from Metroid. They walk along the platform, they, take sharp angles, and they stick on the platform and will hurt you if they run into you. And so that's kind of the most traditional one, where you can clearly see that after a while, he has a delay of where he actually hits. He hits where you were, not where you're going to be. And so you're like, I have to stick, in front of a hedgehog, and then let him lick, and then let him eat it.
And then he gets mad.
He goes, ow.
And you got to do that until there are no more hedgehogs, and then he dies.
He's dead.
Yeah.
He's literally dead.
The emu I mentioned is sort of a boss fight. It'll follow you around after you free it from the wheel, Or it's still in the wheel, it's freed from its restraints.
Yeah.
And then you have to guide it to a little trap door where you can drop it in the floor, like Bowser.
Yeah. Which means it probably drowns, which is kind of terrible.
There is the seahorse that blows bubbles.
Yep.
And the seahorse really isn't that dangerous. It's more so that, like, the part leading up to it is dangerous. There's, like, a beluga that tries to eat you.
Yeah, that fucker was more annoying than the seahorse. The seahorse primarily shoots water, and it is it's a puzzle of getting the water in the right place.
Yeah, but the beluga, honestly, I think it was just bad because you didn't realize you could skip over the top of it.
That is also true. I thought that I had to platform, but at that time I had a tool that I could just kind of skip over.
Mm-hmm. And then the last one's the dog, which appears twice in the game. When you get the frisbee, you have to pull it from the dog shrine.
Fucking hate the dog.
It's this ghost dog that chases you around. You can briefly stun it with firecrackers or, like, get it distracted with firecrackers, but it doesn't dissipate until you grab the, like, mock disc, a fake one, and you put the fake disc in the shrine.
Yeah.
You have to, like, Indiana Jones hot swap it, you know?
Yeah.
But then later, you go up through, like, the top left of the map, and you realize there's another M-disc shrine.
Yeah.
And that means you have to grab the M-disc, carry it through the map, up through the dog temple. By the way, there are these statues of dogs, and when the ghost dog touches them, they turn into ghost dogs that will try to kill you.
They turn into ghost dogs that will, like, run back and forth in a consistent pattern, but not always a safe pattern, essentially.
Yeah, it fills the screen with bullshit.
Yeah. Okay, Billy Bass. Gonna sit you down here for a second.
Billy Basso.
Billy Basso, sorry. Billy Bass is, of course,
SpongeBob.
Yeah, SpongeBob. The dog is a spike in difficulty that I don't like.
There are some parts in the game that do feel notably more difficult, but I think for a lot of the, like, core layer 1 stuff, there is an alternate solution to it.
Yeah.
When it's hard.
Yeah, like you said, the beluga whale can be completely skipped entirely with a tool.
Yeah, well, so it's the frisbee.
Yeah.
You can ride on the frisbee like a little flying saucer. You speed.
Yeah, it's really cute, but it's also very handy.
Mm-hmm. It's needed for a lot of things, and it's very useful for others. It's also, like, one of the only ways to get height or traverse distance in the air without the bubble, which is necessary in a few spots.
Yeah.
Because of the hummingbird. So, when you get all the flames, you take them to the center of the well, which has 4 animal statues of the bosses. And then the floor opens up to the, like, final temple, which has these fucking monkeys.
Yeah, the fucking monkeys.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the final portion, I actually think it's a pretty fair challenge.
Mm-hmm.
They have the classic, like, Shadow Mario enemies who will follow your every move, which are used in some very clever ways.
I was
do
surprised
like them.
they didn't have those until then. That's like a puzzle platforming staple.
Yeah, good restraint, honestly.
Yeah.
They also just, honestly, the more annoying thing is that there are just, like, big monkeys that just kind of are in the, like, the hub room that you branch out from for the micro puzzles.
Yeah.
And traversing those fuckers is annoying.
They kind of reminded me of lemurs, but I feel like they're not lemurs directly.
Yeah, I want to say...
They might have been Safakas, but I don't think they were that either. I'm normally decent at monkeys, but I can't quite put my finger on it without a picture in front of me.
Yeah, but to speedrun past it, it is the section where you end up using a lot of your tools one after the other, brings a lot of things together, also unlocks a new tool as well to even get into it.
The lamp.
The lantern.
Yeah. There's a number of enemies that are kind of spectral, and then also as you gather flames, old parts of the map get darker and these, like, shadow spirits will appear that try to damage you. For some of these, you are able to destroy them with the firecracker because it creates light. Light puts out shadow. There are also candles you can light to permanently remove some of these enemies.
Yeah.
The lamp essentially does that as an item around you.
It also allows you to see the map at any point, because there are some rooms where it's too dark to see the map.
Yeah.
Which I believe sometimes messes with, like, actually unlocking the square. Like, if you can't see the map in it, then
Yeah.
sometimes it doesn't unlock it.
Yeah.
Which-
The, like, spot on the map.
Yeah.
The
But-
map's very important, by the way.
Yes.
So, you get the lamp, and then you go into the ruins a bit further, and you find... What do you even call it? The beast?
It has a name. It is the Manticore.
The Manticore. Yeah.
We probably should have put, like, a specific spoiler warning at the beginning of this, but at the
We
same
did.
time, okay, we did.
Yeah.
I assume if you're this far in, you have already accepted that either you have played the game or you're going to get spoiled on some aspects.
Yeah. I mean, we were just talking about the final dungeon. I assume people would think we're going to the final boss, which is the Manticore.
The fucking Manticore. I misread it initially. I thought it was a human.
Yeah.
I thought that was sort of the big twist, so to speak, that, like, it was just... Because it comes after the monkey segment, and the Manticore travels in a somewhat similar pattern. At the very least, like, the way that its limbs and stuff climb around, that made me think, oh, it's the last guy, it's the dude.
The last melon.
And then he shoots lasers from his eyes, and I was
Yeah.
like, I don't think humans can do that, but I haven't tried.
Essentially, the Manticore is another spot, kind of like the Ostrich, where you have to hit a number of switches to open a door, and each switch is blocked by sort of things that require your existing tools, and the Manticore will try to shoot laser beams at you and try to ram into you to kill you. Getting past it, though, you reach a little plunger that you press down on, and it creates fireworks.
Yeah, there have been plungers previously that will explode certain sections of the map, which is one of the early ways that you, like, unlock new sections and shortcuts and such. And so you see the plunge and you instinctively hit it, and then it has a little fun fireworks show that the Manticore, like, looks up at and then, like, kind of spins around and, like, makes a noise and then explodes himself.
It gets, like, banished into another dimension.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's part one. That's the basic layer. And then you get your house key and you can go home.
Yeah, you get to go home.
You can watch TV, you can sit on the couch, you can look at the little statue or character or whatever of Biggie, the Bigmode mascot, but you can't get into your office. Oh yeah, and there's like a cuckoo clock and anyways.
Yeah, if you go to the right, there's like a cuckoo clock that's like a speedrunning thing, and then there's like a floating ring, kind of like the Sonic Adventure 3 secret stage. Sonic 3 secret stage.
There is no Sonic Adventure 3.
Actually, there's
Fake
like
fan.
5 Sonic Adventure 3s.
Sorry, yeah, there's like 5 of them. So, that's layer 1. Layer 2 is something that I think a lot of players will find the beginning of, but might not necessarily all reach the end. Layer 2... What we just described in layer 1 is sort of the basic ending.
Yeah, this is the if this is the standard Metroidvania, you've made forward progress and beaten the final boss.
Yeah. So there are some Easter eggs hidden throughout the game, and I mean that completely literally. You will find chests that you open, and instead of giving you an item to use or like a key or a firework or a match, they give you an egg. Some of these are pretty easy to find. You'll find them pretty early on. Some of them you find a bit later, but there are 64 eggs.
Yes.
As you collect eggs, they appear in a room in the center of the well with a big peacock. And as you collect more of them, they unlock doors that give you bonus items. The most important one is the whistle.
This is the second one you unlock, I believe?
I think it's the first.
I thought the first was the map.
No, the map you just get by default.
Okay. Yeah. Whatever number it is, the whistle, like you said, is the most important one because the whistle ends up essentially unlocking you the fast travel system of the game.
Yeah, I love this. So you go into a room that has a bunch of these like mice or some sort of rodent, chinchillas, I think, that appear in another part of the game in the like forest area, but they actually respond to your music. I got the whistle before I even went to the forest, so the first time I saw that was there.
Yeah.
Then you go through another room, and there's this, like, bird head. It's like a crow head on the wall. And now me, being a Mario 2 player, I was like, I'm gonna go inside the mouth of this crow head on the wall. And that takes you to a room that has a bunch of other animal heads on walls, and that's like the hub world.
Yes. Also, yes, you're correct. The first thing is the flute, because the second thing is the crow head.
Yeah. So you go into this area, you have a bunch of animals. These are all animals' heads that are on walls in other parts of the map. You'll most likely have the rabbit head unlocked at the start, because that takes you back to pretty much where you spawn. And then other animal heads lead you to other parts of the map with little biome indicators for where they are. For example, there's a like a bear head that goes to the forest, and around it is trees and moss and stuff like that. Then with the whistle out, you press the item button to use it, and then you point in a direction with like the control stick or the arrow keys or what have you, and you press the item button again to play a note. It's very Ocarina of Time.
Yeah.
You can also bend the pitch and the octave like Ocarina of Time, so you can play a lot of stuff on it. It is pretty fully realized.
That I didn't know. That's very fun.
The 8 directions you can point at, the 4 cardinals and the 4 diagonals, are in octave. So from lowest to highest, there's, I'm just trying to think, like, if it's treble, it would be like E, G, B, D, F, A, C, E. Yeah, that's 8 notes.
Yeah.
So you can play a lot of music with that, but it's also how you play music and songs much like Ocarina of Time or other Zelda games to do different things. One of them, by going beneath the hub area, there's a fish doing a little dance.
Yeah, he goes like, oh, 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 oh.
Yep, and that is exactly the way you did it, is the code to warp to the hub area. That is a fast travel warp point. It's a warp zone.
Yeah.
It's a retro game reference. It's a warp zone.
It's
the
warp
whistle.
zone.
It's the warp whistle from Mario 3. You go through the bird head from Mario 2. It's like video games.
Oh man, I love it when a video game is a video game reference.
I know, yeah. So that's that part. That is helpful for finding all the eggs. The other award you get that's really important is the top.
Yes.
Which spins along the ground. Sadly, you cannot ride it, which I felt was a missed opportunity. But it distracts puppies, and most importantly, it drills.
Yeah. Oh man. Getting the top and like using it immediately and finding that it, destroys some of the ground. I was like, oh my god.
Yeah. It's worth noting, this is not really a spoiler, but kind of is, that the egg room, when you get an egg, it appears on the egg room on a shelf, and the position of the egg in the egg room is relative to where they are on the map. So the top leftmost egg is the top leftmost egg, if you know what I mean.
One thing I also want to note is that the map itself is actually really good at showcasing where the secrets are. It won't tell you. But, like, for example, a lot of these secret eggs are in little nooks that are, like, in the ceiling, hidden away by, dangling flora. And so if you go to the map and really inspect the pixels, you will see that there isn't actually a, like, hard set wall there, and that's your indication that, oh, there's something up there, and I need to, find the tool to get there.
Exactly.
The top, I think, indicates that something is under the soil with a, like, double line. Admittedly, I will say the one thing that's a little frustrating is that I feel like some of the areas aren't really showcased, like aren't really signposted with the top. But I think that the having double walls instead of single walls is the indication on the map that you can dig there.
So there's a few ways the top is signposted. There is the double line thickness on the map. There is the fact that the soil that you dig through looks different from regular dirt.
It's a little dithered, I think.
A little dithered, and it doesn't have as much of a surface.
Yeah.
And then there's one more that I'll get to in a minute, because other than the eggs, there's a few other important post-game sort of things to go on. There are the shrines. 3 animal shrines. Each one requires a special disc to open. I don't remember how to start it. I want to say one of the discs might be an egg reward, but I'm not certain. I know one of them is you have to scare the kangaroo with the fireworks like 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, which, fair enough, hugely satisfying, honestly. Fuck the kangaroo.
Yeah. But there are 3 of these animal shrines. I want to go through them in a specific order. So the first one is the snake shrine near the start of the game. You use the snake disc or the S disc to enter it. And inside there is a snake that plays a game of Snake.
Nice.
And you get the remote. Now, there are on-off blocks that, like, you toggle with switches where, like, they'll either be solid or they will be pass-through. And light also follows the pass-through and solid, nature of them. And for most of the game, it's just switches allow you to do this. The remote lets you remote activate switches in most of the areas of the map that have these blocks. You'll tell because there's a little antenna receiver in the rooms where you can use the remote.
Yeah.
So this opens
a
up
game where the background is important.
Yeah,
and
pay
it's
attention.
Lovely.
Pay attention, you fucking nerds. So the remote lets you activate those. It's very handy. There's a few other uses for it that I'm not going to get into. Then there's the kangaroo shrine, which gives you the bouncy ball. And there's like these blocks that appear in exactly 2 rooms. And one of them is the kangaroo room, the kangaroo shrine.
The kangaroo, if you will.
Yeah. And when the bouncy ball hits this block, or sorry, it's like there's like 3 or 4 rooms maybe. Anyways, when the bouncy ball hits the block, it becomes breakout instead.
Yeah.
Normally the ball follows physics and like bounces in an arc. It's very fast though. But if it hits the block, it becomes straight up just diagonal movement, hitting a block. These blocks that are special breakout blocks will then destroy until the ball goes off screen, in which case they'll respawn. Very cool. You can catch the ball while it's in breakout mode and throw it again, and it'll still keep the blocks despawned, which is very useful both in the kangaroo shrine and in the breakout minigame. There is a breakout minigame.
Of course there is.
Now, the final shrine is maybe the most important. This is the, like, eel shrine. Deep sea fish. You go into, like, the penguin palace. There's a back door. You go into the fish shrine. You're underwater. There's a whole underwater city, which is really cool.
Yeah.
And then you kind of, like, I think it's you have to play a song to, like, pacify the snake or the eel, whatever it is. It's all bony, though, skeletal. And once it's pacified, you can enter its mouth, and you appear in another warp, and you get the glow stick, the UV blacklight glow stick.
Yeah.
This reveals secrets on the background, and there's so many things that are revealed by the glow stick. The top. A lot of places that don't have specific soil will have a top icon in the blacklight that you can see. The one directly outside of the egg room, for example, has a symbol of a top over it. To be like, here, use the top here.
Yeah.
The blacklight lets you force the kangaroo to spawn in certain rooms. It shows you a lot of other, like, secret codes. There's another warp zone code you get pretty quickly by using the top in the room. I mean, by using the blacklight in the room where you get it. And then also there's, like, you can go back through the water area and there's jellyfish that have stuff, or, you know, there's just secrets everywhere. And there's even lore you can find, like murals on the wall written in invisible ink.
Yeah.
And these are also important for getting the true ending. Keep that in mind. The blacklight is such a cool mechanic because it encourages you to go through the whole game again with it, but, like, you are rewarded for doing so.
Yeah, I love it too because chances are, assuming that you play it in a similar manner to the way that I did, you're probably going to get the lamp first. You're probably going to get, you know, the final item, quote unquote, first. And so the lamp, one of the functions of the lamp, aside from just lighting things up, is that it actually makes you, like, any of the enemies that will shoot themselves out or what have you that are, like, bluish or reddish won't hurt you anymore when you have the lamp on. And so, like, the fact that it functions similarly to a tool that you have already previously gotten, but, like, unlocks an entire new layer.
Yeah, so the concept of layers in games is something that has been explored and discussed in other games before Animal Well. I think a common one is in incremental games. There are layers of prestige where, like, you get a billion sand and then you get the glass, and the glass is a new layer that builds off of sand. And even when you're done with sand, there's still the glass layer.
Yeah.
You know. And then in terms of puzzles, there are other games that I will talk about later when we sort of go over the just sort of analysis of the game. I guess I could just say Fez is the perfect example, and that's old enough that I can spoil it.
Yeah.
Fez has multiple layers in that it is a platformer, but then when you realize there's a puzzle to it, it becomes a puzzle platformer, and then you realize there's codes, and then now there's this puzzle hunt aspect to it. That is a game that has multiple layers in that they are all present throughout the entire game, but you need a filter to actually perceive them, whether that's a literal filter like the blacklight or a more mental filter of, like, realizing there's something there that you can then go back to. The Witness, exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
You could think of the EPs and Witness as a layer 2 beyond the primary layer. It is laid out across the entire game as a thin sheet, but it only comes up when it matters. There's a lot of stuff in Animal Well that is there from the start that you can look at. There are these pillars in the background with numbers on them. I'm not going to say what they do yet because that's another layer, but just those are in there from the start. You can look at those. But they probably won't mean much to you until you're much later in the game. The blacklight is sort of different because you can only see certain things with it. But at the same time, I think it is really cool how they're integrated into the world. Oftentimes, if there is an area with just a bespoke brick wall and like no other walls around it, that brick wall probably has something hidden in blacklight.
Yeah.
Because like there's consistency to it still. It's just really, really nifty. And I think the layered design is something that appears a lot in puzzle games because puzzle game players are primed to expect stuff like that. I mentioned Fez and the Witness. But like you kind of don't see it as much in other genres of like there being a step beyond the step. I think one area it does appear is kart racers. Kart racers like to also be collectathons, but only towards the end game. Think like Diddy Kong Racing. You have to get like keys and secret balloons and stuff in levels.
Yeah, CTR.
And so like in Diddy Kong Racing, layer 1 is just racing. Layer 2 is exploring the tracks for these things. That's part of why I really like Sonic Ring Racer or Robotnik's Ring Racers.
Yeah. Oh god, shoutouts to Robotnik's Ring Racers,
It's so
by the way.
fucking
That's
good.
that's probably going to be its own episode.
It's so good. So yeah, I just think that's a really cool bit, and Billy Basso's usage of layers in the devlog is very intentional, based on sort of his inspirations and games like Animal Well. So, you get all the eggs. Then what do you do with the eggs? Well, you use the blacklight on the eggs to reveal several lines on the eggs. Well, if you use the lamp in the room with the 3 chinchillas to the left of the bird room where you get the whistle,
Statements dreamt up by the utterly deranged.
it reveals 8 numbers that the directions of the whistle correspond to numbers. If you use the black light, it shows lines. You can convert lines to numbers to tell the direction you have to do when you play the song from the eggs. Sorry, this is too much of a spoiler for you.
It's fine.
That gives you the big egg.
The big egg. By the way, real quick sidebar. I love the eggs themselves. There's so many good little ones. There's
Yeah.
like egg as a service. There's upside down egg.
Upside down egg's a fucker, by the way.
Like it's all of them are really cute.
Okay. Yeah. So you get the big egg. Then if you notice in the murals of some areas, it shows the manticore, but it shows you like riding the manticore, and in one spot it shows the manticore hatching from an egg. This is that egg.
Oh shit.
Also, there's one more item you'll need, which is the wheel. You get that for rescuing cats. When you have all the items, you bring them to a room that has an incubator. You incubate the egg. You get the manticore. You jump in its mouth. You become the manticore. You ride the manticore into space, and then you get the good ending.
Blackout, wake up, do a bump, white
I
out.
know. So you get the good ending that way, okay? But wait, you get the office key. What's in your office? The bunny okay. Next layer.
Next layer. So, in your home, there is a locked door. You can't enter it until you get the office key, of course.
Yes. Inside is a pegboard or like a signboard or something, chalkboard maybe, that has bunnies drawn on it. Might be drawn in invisible ink, I don't know. The bunnies. This is where the game starts cooking. The bunnies are wonderful. I love it. These are like the hardest corest puzzles in the game. They remind me a lot of like the skulls in Halo. They often require either like really tricky maneuvering. There's some that require difficult platforming. There's one where you have to resummon the dog ghost, by the way. So enjoy that.
Of course there is. Yeah, great.
One that took me the longest was one where you have to like go through like 4 or 5 screens without touching the ground, essentially.
Yeah, which is fucked. But it's also really interesting.
Yeah, there's a few bunnies that aren't too hard to get early on, but whenever you get a bunny, you hear a little jingle, you get an achievement for the first one you get, and then they appear in space. There's a little, like, planetoid floating island you go on to. That's where the Sonic 3 ring leads. And all the bunnies appear there later, grazing on some grass. Okay, so, like, you've got the bunnies. There's a lot that are really hard. There's one that you actually require to look up the solution. That sounds dumb, but I think it's cool. I'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah.
There's a big mural, and you unlock the ability to replace the pixels on the mural and draw your own image.
Oh.
And every player has like a 4x4 slice of the mural, and you have to combine them together to create the big picture. So you can look it up, and you will have to, because you can't solve it on your own.
It's really good. That's really cool.
Yeah. So when you get all the bunnies, nothing happens immediately. But on the chalkboard, there's a cipher you can use to decipher the bunnies, and then use them to create a code which is inputted by flying through space. Space code.
Space code.
Ghost to ghost. And when you do that, you get the ability to transform into a moth. Okay.
Yeah.
So the last layer, though, that's not even the last layer.
Yeah, this isn't even the last layer. I want to interject and briefly say that I completed layer 1.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to complete layer 2. I tried to get all the eggs. I couldn't.
There's some toughies.
There's a number of very tough ones. And so, like, a lot of these layers are still off layer to me, and I guarantee I'm going to forget a lot of these specifics here, and I'm looking forward to it, because I want to solve a number of these puzzles on myself.
Yeah. So the last layer is one that I would never have been able to solve on my own, and it is meant to be solved as a community. It's not really an ARG in the way that the ARG was an ARG, but it is similar in concept. It is a puzzle hunt.
Yeah.
And not only is it a puzzle hunt, it is a puzzle hunt, and it's one that requires you to actually do things that are difficult. So, like, there's a whole number of stats that the game tracks, like the number of steps you've taken. The game has an in-game timer, and it even has an hourly chime. I didn't even realize that's what that was. Oh. It's like this loud thing that goes like, boop, 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 boop.
Yeah!
I thought it was a symbol that an egg was in a room or a rabbit was in a room. No, it's just a cuckoo clock.
That explains a lot.
Yeah, and so if you beat the true ending as fast as possible, you get a figurine of Donkey, and he gives you garbled text. It's not even text, it's characters, symbols, in Unicode. There's a number of these Unicode strings you can find. There's one by pissing off the hummingbird enough. A lot of them require doing obscure things or hard things like eating every berry without taking damage. It's kind of a mess, but when you get them all, you then input them into a poster on the wall of your house, and you get a map through the stars again. It's another space code.
Yeah.
And this one takes you to a time capsule that is absolutely fantastic. Yeah. You get an audio message by Billy Basso, Dan Edelman, and Donkey.
It's really sweet.
Yeah.
It's also really funny. But
yeah, I'm not going to go into the actual like specifics of what they say. You can find that for yourself.
Yeah. It's so really well done, and like there's just enough signposting that like the puzzles as you figure them out don't sound bullshit. It sounds like things that you could theoretically intuit on your own.
Yeah.
Maybe, you know, like, it is meant to be a community effort, and fucking thank God it was, because, yeah, oh boy, I do not often have the mind for thinking puzzle games. But, like, it's so well done, the way the game layers in on itself. Love this game.
I want to say that the codes that you get for completing these, if you know the code ahead of time, so like if you know the space code to reach the thing that you get from getting all the bunnies, you could just do that.
Yeah.
You're not gated by actually collecting the bunnies. So if you wanted to access the final thing, you could do that and look it up. And I think that is important because when the game wants you to solve it on your own, it will force you to do so in a way. But, like, the bunnies and, to a greater extent, this final Unicode puzzle were meant to be solved collectively. And so it makes it so that when one person essentially has the progress, everyone has the progress if they're working together.
Yeah.
You know, when you have the Unicode string, you can paste that into, you know, Word or something, or take a screenshot of it, and you have it. That's really helpful because it means that you don't have to actually do all that difficult platforming on your own to get the final, like, actual reward. You can do it to say you've done it. Some of them have achievements involved, but they're usually the more easy ones, like stealing a nut.
Yeah. I also want to very briefly mention that two items that you get are the stamp and the pencil, which allow you to interact with the map. Specifically, the stamp allows you to make a number of different symbols, like a lot of other games. There's a number of games that do this, and the pencil allows you to draw on the map. And, like, while this is the kind of game that you definitely want a pen and paper while you're doing this, I really like that aspect of, like, I like any game that is like, hey, here's the base map, and here's a bunch of tools to fill it out yourself. But, like, I think that works really well for this game, especially because it gets into, from my understanding, it gets into some, like, La Mulana-esque territory.
Yeah. I love this type of game, by the way. It's, like, part of it's a Mulana-like, in that it's a Metroidvania with riddles and shit, and the riddles are pretty cryptic, and they require understanding of the lore and the world around you, and not just reading text in a sideways way.
Yeah.
Like, you have to pay attention to the backgrounds, the things you're facing against, how they connect to each other. There's a really cool bit I noticed, like, just as we were talking, which is that there are these pipes you go through by blowing bubbles, and then you jump at the bubble, and you go through the tube, and I love tubes. But they have these, like, eel heads that look kind of like the dead eel skeleton thing in the eel temple.
Oh, yeah. I always thought they were like whale-ish, but yeah.
Kind of, or like a catfish, maybe?
Catfish might be it, but yeah,
it's
that's
still very similar.
Yeah.
And you do end up going into the mouth of the dead skeleton eel. There's a lot of tiny bits like that bring things together in a cohesive way that I think is really fun. I just like this genre. Like, I think Fez and Tunic are the other main examples, and there are Easter egg references to those games in Animal Well. You can tell that Billy Basso is very inspired by them. I think the multi-layered puzzle solving of, like, there is a regular game, but then there's a whole bunch of secret doodads is just really fulfilling, and something I just always like in games. Like fucking Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire and Emerald.
Yeah,
with the Reggies.
The fucking Reggie
that's
puzzles.
Like, it's not a puzzle that's fully layered over the entire map, but it is still enough of a secret that requires decryption and weird logic that is riddle, like, hinted at.
Yeah.
Big and small.
Having never played Mulana, the idea of, like, the maps themselves being important in a game that, you know, is just... The idea of, like, literally looking at the map and the map itself being an important piece of the puzzle kind of opened my third eye a little bit into, like, if you treat, you know, if you treat standard game mechanics with the kind of reverence that you would treat a normal puzzle, you can get something intensely interesting.
Yeah, I think, like, when playing games like this, there's a number of heuristics you pick up that aren't common in other games. Like, when I started playing, I looked at the background because I was like, I know there's going to be shit back there.
Yeah.
And there was. And, like, I figured the map would have some significance when looking at it because I'm used to that being a thing in these games.
Yeah.
And even then, like, when I got the flute and I saw the numbers around it, I was like, all right, I got to use this. I got to start looking for numbers. It's a very enjoyable process for me of, like, gathering clues and piecing them together. And it's just, I just like it. I want more games like this. Make Animal Well 2, like Donkey said.
Yeah. Billy Basso, you did real dang good.
Yeah.
Really looking forward to more that comes out of you. And I'm also, that was a weird way of wording it, but we're going to keep it in. Really looking forward to what Billy Basso makes in the future. Really looking forward to what Bigmode continues to publish.
Yeah, they published a good game.
Yeah, they you know what? They fucking did it. They're one for one. I look forward to more good games, hopefully.
Mm-hmm. I don't have much else to say at the moment. I'm very winded.
Yeah, I think that we did a really good job covering the game and the various layers. I would say that this is very much an example of, even if you've heard us whinge about this, whinging, even if you've heard us talk about this all the way through, it's still something that is worthwhile exploring on your own time, because my god, the visual spectacle of this game alone is just so beautiful.
It's beautiful.
The vines are fizz objects that you interact with in a pixel art game. That's so good. That's so clever, and like the lighting is beautiful. All of the staging and all of the screens are beautiful.
The water looks great.
It is an intensely, more and more, I find novel visual experience and novel gameplay experience to be a lot more worthwhile to me than just general good gameplay. And thankfully Animal Will has both. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, cannot recommend this game enough. Almost certainly going to be on our short list for Indie Game of the Year.
There's so many.
Yeah. There's already so many. But
and don't be afraid to look things up or ask for help.
Yeah. Just in general.
Don't be afraid to ask for help.
And to look things up.
Mm-hmm. Like our socials. You
Oh!
can follow us on any podcasting platform you like. Give us a like, give us a rating, give us a review. Let us know how we're doing. Let us know what you want us to cover next or things you think we might like. You can also follow us on Twitter and Blue Sky at NetSurferPro, where we post teasers and updates and whatnot on new episodes, upcoming episodes, or delays. You can also follow me on Twitter at Twackaroo or Blue Sky at twack.bsky.social. TWAK or TWAKAROO, where I post takes and updates and shit. If you wanted to see my pinball scores, look at Twackaroo on Pindigo. And I stream on Twitch, on twitch.tv/twack. TWAK. Check it out.
As for myself, you can find me on TikTok and maybe Twitter if you want to see me being angry at Galen Wilson. That's at GALENWILS0N. I've been actually posting a lot more TikToks recently, talking about various political or otherwise, video game topics. So please check that out first. You can also find me on YouTube at The Only Galen on YouTube, and you can find me on Twitch at twitch.tv/machinegunvampire. Yeah, I've been trying to actually get a lot more active, maybe start cross-posting some of my stuff from TikTok to YouTube, etc. You can also, if you'd like, I recently wrote an article about #SaveTF2 and why it will fail.
And there's people that never read the article thinking you said stuff you didn't.
Yeah,
but
I'm
that's
not
to be
surprised.
expected.
Yeah.
That means you made it.
Exactly. I've gotten my first hate mail. It's great.
You've gotten your first, headline jerk.
Yeah. But yeah, aside from all of that, thank you very much for listening. This has been an episode long in the making, and I'm really excited to finally talk about this game.
Yeah, and Billy Basso, if you want to come on and talk about Fez, feel free. And Donkey, if you want to come on and talk about
Nitro Rad.
I was going to say World Tour, the Razor Scooter video game.
Ooh,
but I don't remember if we had that reserved for anyone else.
Donkey, if you want to talk to our people, we can just hash something out.
We can hashtag something out. Hashtag something out. Post it. I don't know what it's for. Do it anyways. Make it trend.
All right, see ya.
See ya.